Hi everyone, Bill Swan in the EYSU Distance Education Office. I want to talk to you just a bit today about pedagogy. We want to give you something concise, just a few minutes, that covers the basic ideas and issues that come into play when you're building different parts of your courses. In later tutorials, we're going to take a look at each of the stages of course development in some detail. We just thought it would be helpful to look at the overall lay of the land first. So hang around for a quick take and stay tuned for more guidance and more instruction in the future. A good place to start is where your students will start when they check out your course. What do you want them to learn? What can they do when they're done with your course that they couldn't do at the beginning? These are your learning objectives. They're the key to everything that follows, the foundation of your content, assessments, interactions, etc. And within the Quality Matters framework, you need measurable objectives. And then the content you put in your course and your assessments need to align with your learning objectives. So this just says you want to follow up on your objectives for your course by giving your students content that helps them learn what you wanted them to learn and assessments that measure whether they learned it. As a general principle, good learning objectives apply the active learning paradigm. Active learning focuses on the end state for the learner. What can they actually do when they've learned something? So this draws your focus and the student's focus on building towards activities and assignments that have them doing the things as much as possible that you want them to learn. From this perspective, learning objectives should generally be written from the student's perspective. The goal is for the student to be able to do something. They should use an action verb, one that reflects what the student can do, and generally they use a noun after the action verb. So an example would be, students will be able to identify different rhetorical strategies employed by participants in a debate. So we have the word students, and identify is the verb, and rhetorical strategies is the noun. The verbs that we use in learning objectives have quite a bit of significance. They tend to reflect the level of knowledge we're asking the student to achieve to reach that objective. So in this case, the verb is identify. It's at the lowest level, the knowledge level, of a widely used knowledge classification system known as Bloom's taxonomy. The verb identify reflects remembering information, which is a good place to start when building towards more challenging or higher level objectives. After writing your measurable learning objectives, you know where your students are going, you know where you want them to go, so you can put content in your course that helps them get there, assignments that induce them to put it into practice, and assessments to evaluate to what extent they reach those goals. So what you need is alignment. Your content, assignments, and assessments all should align with those foundational objectives at the base of your course. Let's start with content. You might convey your content through some combination of readings from one or more books, PowerPoints, recorded audio or video, historical documents, other informational resources on the web, or mashups of YouTube content or other content. Whatever combination you use, the basic concept you want to apply is segmenting. You don't want long videos, like your complete in-class lecture, or long audio segments, or anything that requires the learner to just sit and consume your content for extended periods. This is how online learning differs from instruction in a classroom. In a class, there's give and take between you and the students that breaks up the flow of your lecture and keeps people engaged. And you don't have that online. So what you do is you give them your content in shorter segments. Break it up into smaller chunks the learner can digest easily. And then have them click somewhere, another item, to access more content. This is self-paced learning. The student is in the driver's seat. And it supports that active learning concept. It keeps the students actively digging through your materials to find out more. The next major idea to consider when dealing with your content is sequencing. What order do you put things in? Well, here again, you go back to your learning objectives. If your objectives are using higher level action verbs from Bloom's taxonomy, in many cases they require the achievement of lower level objectives first. So for example, you have to know the elements of a model before you can use the model to evaluate a real world problem. So you sequence both your content and your assignments to build from the lower levels to the higher levels. Action learning is again happening here. Higher level objectives often have students doing the things that you want them to learn. You're building towards more and more realistic, real-world type activities. In addition to alignment, segmenting, and sequencing, there's a few more things to consider when it comes to building interactivity into your course. We're all aware, I think, that there's a social component to learning, and there's a lot of research to back that up. Social learning theory, a school identified with psychologist Albert Bandura, suggests that a key component of learning is participation in communities of practice. People learn from seeing others perform tasks and working with others to gain those skills. The constructivist model says something similar. Learning begins within a social and cultural context, and students engage with one another and the instructor as they work to solve problems. Luckily, there's quite a few ways of interacting with students through the Blackboard system. You obviously want to use the discussion forum to create some ongoing interaction. And you can have group assignments, having the students work together on projects. You'll receive emails with questions from your students, and you want to set a reasonable turnaround time for getting back to them. And you also have blogs, journals, wikis, etc. You want the course to evolve into a learning community with give and take from students and you, their instructor. So that's pedagogy as it relates to course design from kind of a high-level, broad perspective. We have measurable learning objectives that correspond to levels of knowledge from something like Bloom's taxonomy and reflect action learning principles. We have alignment of the objectives with content, assignments, and assessments. We have content that is segmented to facilitate self-paced learning. We have sequenced content to build lower levels of knowledge first, which then supports that reach for higher levels of knowledge. We have both content and assignments that support the action learning trajectory as students put more and more of what they learn into practice. And we have interactive elements that bring students together and instructors with their students to support social learning. Thank you for completing this overview of pedagogy. In future videos, we'll look at the pieces of the puzzle, how you do learning objectives, how you build content items, and we can get a good bit more specific and hands-on with how you do those things. But I hope the big picture helps in understanding what we're trying to accomplish with each of the pieces of course development. If you have questions or if you want to set up an appointment, please give me a call at 1535 or email me at wswan@ysu.edu. Thanks again.